Okay. Hi, I'm Amy from Authors Buzz, and I'm here with Tabitha. And today we are taking our conversation from your beta readers and the information they gave back to you. And now we're moving on to editing. Hi, Tabitha.
Hi, Amy. Editing, so much fun.
It's
Honestly,
really,
well, okay. I think there's two schools of thought around editing. Some people prefer the draft because that's like, telling the story. It feels exciting and you get it and think that editing is sort of drudgery. I actually look at it the other way around. I am a person who reads the end of a book first if it's really stressful because I can't stomach the stress, right? So for me, drafting, I know. Drafting a first draft has that little bit of anxiety and stress for me as part of the process because I haven't finished telling the story yet. So there's this little bit of anxiety. I don't know. It's just the kind of personality I have. So for me, editing, it's already there. Now I'm making it better. So I go into it with a different frame of mind, I think. And um,
you also have the experience to know it actually is going to be better. So
yes,
you're kind of excited. I'm at
yes,
that point now myself that I'm like, oh good, oh good. Like let's watch this
right.
get better and
Yes.
better, and it's almost like the cloudiness goes away and your essence of your story starts emerging. So let's talk about how you dive in and begin that.
Well, first, I think it's really important to know that there are a couple of different kinds of editing. I know when I wrote my first manuscript, you're thinking that, oh, it's spell check and making sure your punctuation is good, and and that's editing, right? And unfortunately, or
Yes,
fortunately,
the bliss of ignorance.
listening.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. So the big kind of edit that most authors talk about that's daunting and that we need to have tips on how to get through it is a developmental edit. And a developmental edit, you can think of it as your big picture edits. It's the places that we had talked about when you'd asked your beta readers for all this feedback, and they're telling you places where the story is dragging, places where the characters are not working for them, or ooh, you didn't really nail that ending, or something like that. Those are the big picture pieces of your manuscript that are not working. So that's a developmental edit, and you may go through one round, you may go through 10 rounds of developmental edits before your story is the most dramatic, exciting, well-told version that it can be. So that's developmental edits. And then there's the more refining bits of editing after that. And somebody will do what's called a copy edit. And often a copy edit and a proofread can sort of mush together a little bit, or they blend together all three steps. But the copy edit is essentially catching inconsistencies in your manuscript. Like if, for example, you set one scene and it was daytime, and then it's only 2 hours later, but it's the middle of the night. A copy editor will say, oh, you've got something inconsistent. Or the character had blue eyes in one scene and now they have green eyes in another. Or you misspelled you started spelling their name John, Jon, and then it switched to the H. A copy editor
Those
will.
are the things we all do. In the beginning, I need to keep all these note cards of what the characters look like. I have to
Right.
keep going. You think you know,
You
but
would think that wouldn't happen,
you
but
get to know your characters.
you would think that stuff doesn't happen, but it really does. And then of course the proofreader, that's the final version. Like that's somebody that's going through and truly making sure that everything has consistency, that all of your, there's no punctuation or grammar, the little errors. You want a clean manuscript when you either send it off to an editor or an agent rather, or you're publishing. So those are essentially the three kinds of edits. And they do blend together. Like I have a great editor who, we know we're working on developmental edits. So she's not really doing the proofreading because you may be cutting whole sections of text that, are not going to, it's a waste of time to actually spell check and do all that stuff. However, she will call me on any inconsistencies in the actual plot or the characters or descriptions. And then that second round kind of takes into consideration integrating all of the developmental edits and then plus looking for any other things that just got out of whack or that I misspelled or I did something silly. So those are the kinds you will spend most of your time on developmental edits. That's the thing we talk the most about.
Yeah, so let's say someone doesn't have an editor, maybe that's not in the budget, but they do have these notes from their beta readers. How can they use those in the same way you would if you had a developmental editor?
So I would say I kind of have like 5 things I sort of think about when I'm getting ready to edit. And whether it's me working with sometimes I'm pulling together the beta reader stuff first. Sometimes I'm doing it simultaneously. My real editor is, has sent me something, and I'm using the beta readers material at the same time. But I tackle it the same way when I'm doing a developmental edit. And I would say the first thing, and I know we've mentioned this before, is get some space from your manuscript. Take the time to let all of that commentary sort of settle, and let your creative process start to flow again. You'll start to begin to identify places where you know how to make the correction, or I have this great idea. I suddenly know how to get that character from here to there, where before I didn't have an idea. So take the time. It'll stop you from wanting to argue with your beta readers and your editor, which is never a good idea. You remember, you asked them for this feedback, so you don't want to be defending yourself and defending your manuscript. So take the space so that you don't feel the need to do that anymore, but also the space allows you to integrate all the things that you've heard and process it, and then get ready to, implement it. Then when I'm actually ready, because I've got, ideas are flowing, I would say I tackle the big picture plot changes first, because that's, it often has a trickle down effect. If I'm changing something in one scene, now I've got to follow through and make sure that change still makes sense, or I don't have to make other adjustments elsewhere in the manuscript. So those big picture plot changes, I do those first. And then after that, I think about my characters, and I'll look through each character. I'll kind of read through the manuscript with each character in mind, and make sure the character's arc is evolving the way that I want it to, that we're actually seeing dynamic changes in these characters. They're not just constantly responding to things and having no discernible change to them. Or
right. So let's just pause for a second.
Yeah,
that's a good place. That's a good place to pause, because character arc, that's essential for any good novel, where something needs to change internally within the character because of what they're experiencing. Do you just give like a one sentence about that, so people who are new to this can have their eye on that as they're writing or editing?
Sure. Well, when you think about when you meet your character at the very beginning of the story, they're coming to you with all of their background and their history and who they are up to that point, right? And so that's when when you meet them at the opening scene or whatever, they're at a certain point in the journey as a human being or an alien or whatever they are. But now you're gonna navigate them through this story. The plot is going to work on them, and then they in turn are going to work to drive the story. And change has to happen along the way. If you're going to put your characters through, say, I write science fiction, so if I'm going to keep my characters at, say, a battle, or there's this overarching good versus evil, it's going to take a toll. It's going to have effects. They're going to lose people that they love. They're going to have conflicts. They're going to have moral quandaries. So to create an authentic character and really see that character change and develop, you start with where they are, with all the history you know about them, but then you're walking them through this story, or they're going through this story, and the plot is acting upon the character, and the character is in turn driving the story. So that was not one sentence.
And that's, well, you know what, and that's, well, we're going off the rails, kids, a little bit, because part of that is, it's so fun when the character starts to lead you, where you have set your plot like it's going to go this way, but they're like, no, this is what's happening. So there are those moments that are like, just like, this is what, one of my characters named is Bar. This is what Bar is doing. I guess this is what he's doing. And it's that magic, It is
that magic, because it means that character is evolving authentically, right? And believably in the story. If you're going to then force the plot you had in mind exactly as it was on a character that has already undergone some change or development, or has just become more alive to you, then it is going to feel forced, right? And it's not going to give that character the space and the color in life and authenticity, right? So
yeah, if they're talking to you, you have to listen.
You do have to listen. So character arcs are a really good thing. I go through, and that's where, again, you might be making adjustments at the same time. The character might be influencing something in the plot. The plot might be changing the way a character would respond, or something like that. So those two sort of go hand in hand. But for the sake of how do I generally do it? I generally tackle what I consider to be big plot holes first, and then go back in with the character plot integration in mind. And then that's, and remember, I think I said this from the beta readers, is that you're looking at your characters from the way you have an intention for how they should be received by the reader. If the reader is not receiving them that way, that's an opportunity to go in and fix something.
Right. Line that up.
Yeah, and I know I've done that, but I've mentioned that before. And then the other thing, don't be afraid to cut. That's, you have to be able to get rid of text and you almost don't know what is going to really be important until the story is told. Then you can come back in and say, gosh, I really thought this was going to be important, but it turns out in the grand picture, that's 2 sentences worth, not 5 paragraphs or not 5 pages. And you can just chop, and don't be afraid to chop. And that's that thing about what I interpret as kill your darlings.
Yep.
That phrase, it's not necessarily you have to kill off a main character. I don't think it actually is supposed to mean that at all. Maybe sometimes, but you have to be willing to eliminate anything that doesn't serve your story. And that includes really good writing that you're proud of, that you're like, wow, this is the best sentence I've ever constructed.
Sometimes you fall in love just with the sentence.
Right. And that's gotta go, if it doesn't serve the story. So
now, do you keep some, I don't even know, do you keep if you have something good that you need to cut, but you might want to, do you keep a file or something?
Yes. Yeah. I cut it and I put it in another file. That psychologically makes me okay about cutting out really good stuff.
It's like putting your crap in the basement.
Yes. You're like, all right, I know 90% of that stuff I am never going to look at.
It's like a holding cell until you're ready.
Yes. So you're ready to either junk it or possibly it has a home somewhere else. You're like, ooh.
It could be, honestly, sometimes it's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
So. Was that our 5?
And that was 4. And then the last one is after you've done all this work, you got to read it again and make sure you've integrated everything. And so I do a chapter by chapter read through and make sure each chapter has the right, the right amount of tension and energy, but also that there's consistency. Now I've made so many changes. Are there any places where I have to make last minute adjustments or that sort of thing and integrate the whole? And then, sometimes you have to do it again, the whole thing. But oftentimes a good developmental edit, for me, it's one really good developmental pass and then a few smaller chunks along the way, at least now.
Things that you might, like a scene you might need to add or subtract, like connecting pieces. Yes. Can we have a quick review of the 5?
Yes, we can. So a quick review of the 5. First, get some space from your manuscript. You're not going to be able to come up with the creative energy that you need right away after you get a whole bunch of red lines through your document. Tackle the big picture plot changes first. Follow that by the character development arcs. And often those 2 will go together. So they might not be step 2 and 3. It might be step 2.5, 3, 3, 2, whatever. Don't be afraid to cut and then read through chapter by chapter to be able to integrate what you've done.
Nice. Yay.
Good.
That sounds perfect. So there's some tips on editing, and until we see you all again, thank you for listening to Authors Buzz.